Good morning, this is the Urban Monk. I'm obviously in my bedroom and I woke up this morning at 5 o'clock inspired by the gospel yesterday about the parable of the seed. Now, oftentimes people probably can't cite the content of the readings at Sunday Mass, but I think when there are parables, it's more memorable. And the memorable image in my mind obviously was the seed. The connection in my life is very clear. And we can talk about the theological kind of precepts behind the parable. But what I wanted to do today was to create a video on the practical elements of how to make a seed fruitfully grow and how to till and prepare ground for that seed. So let's go outside and find out how it's done. The first thing we want to do is locate a spot where you're going to start the tilling and the preparation of the ground. I've chosen this bed, and here in this bed we have this overgrown arugula. Overgrown because it's going to seed, and it's going to seed first by producing these blossoms. These blossoms, these flowers are actually edible, and that's why I grew them out like this, is I eat the flowers on my salads. It's a very, very good and nutty kind of taste, and I just love the way it looks as well. But what I'm going to do, because I'm essentially out of land, is to uproot the arugula and then restart the soil and then till it again and also prepare it so we can put a new seed crop in it. So first step is finding a piece of land that you want to plant your seed in. So now that we've found a piece of land to do our planting in, what we're going to do is remove any obstacles of growth from the soil. So obstacles for growth would be other types of weeds and vegetation that we can remove, or rocks that have appeared. Now you notice that I've already removed the arugula, the vegetation that was formerly here, but I've also left volunteers behind. These are vegetation plants that have been planted previously in the season and have come up again, like kale. So I'm going to leave this kale to mature so I can also use it and harvest it later. So one of the things that I'm doing now is making sure that the soil is fine. We want the soil to be as fine as possible. So we're going to till it, and to make sure that there are any pieces or clumps of soil that are condensed are broken up into this fine soil. So here we are. We're preparing this piece of land by making sure that the soil is broken apart and not compact and fine. Then the next thing we're going to do is enrich the soil. I always enrich it with some sort of natural or organic compost. I have my own compost, but it's not prepared yet, so I've purchased this natural compost, all organic, that I can enrich the soil with. So it's always good to enrich the soil because if there's already vegetation here that's taken up all the nutrients, you want to refill it and re-energize it, obviously. So we're going to integrate this compost into the soil. And what's good about compost too is the compost will break up the ground. If you have any clay in your ground, compost is a great substance to put in the soil to make sure that you have soil that will help with the growth and the production of vegetation from the seed. Now we're ready to plant the seeds. I've chosen this bed specifically for greens because I like to designate certain beds for certain types of vegetation. And this part of the garden I'm going to do collards and also some Swiss chard, really hardy kind of greens. And so in order to prepare for the actual planting of the seeds, I want to make sure that the ground is ready, and it is. It's been enhanced with compost, and what I'm going to do is create spaces for the seeds to be planted in. And notice that I don't go very deep. Just follow the instruction on the box or the seed packet and what it says. It says planting depth is 1/2 inch and seed spacing is about 1 inch, and then between rows 18 to 30 inches. Now these are just suggestions. I don't usually follow suggestions because, their suggestions. But what I would like to do is follow them as closely as possible. 1/2 inch is good because it'll give you that ability then to put the soil above it and to do it nicely in such a way that doesn't hamper the growth of the seed. So just carefully put the seed in, so cognizant of the fact that the spacing needs to be a certain amount. And I like to grow my vegetables in rows because I'm a perfectionist. So I tend to follow the rows directly. And then after planting the seed in there, in the spot, we're going to cover it with the soil, 1/2 inch, and then pat it nicely. So we've successfully planted the seeds into the ground. They've now been patted down, and the seeds are comfortably resting in the earth. What I've done is mark the rows where I've planted the seeds, just to make sure that I know where the seeds are. The next thing we want to do is water it, and instead of watering it with a watering can, I'm using a mist, just because the soil is very lightly on top of the seed, and if I overwater it, the soil will disappear and you'll find that the seed will be exposed. You don't want the seed exposed for the various birds and animals to consume it. You want to make sure that it's covered, and covered enough that it's going to germinate. And watering it like this in a mist ensures that the soil is moist enough so it'll germinate. Of course, you don't want to overwater it nor underwater it. You just want to make sure that the soil is moist. The temperature should be ideal. Obviously in the summer it's going to be nice and warm at night, so that should help it to germinate. And my success rate with germination is pretty good. The next couple of days you want to make sure the soil is moist, and that you protected this at all costs. Some seeds are more popular with animals, so if you need to cover the seeds up with some sort of protective barrier, if you have seeds like corn, for instance, that you're planting in, you know who loves the corn? Oh yeah, it's those critters outside. Where are they? They've been running around, those squirrels. They dig up everything and eat them. But generally speaking, they don't touch my seeds because, I've put them in the ground compact, and they're too stupid to find them. So maturation depends on the seed. Takes about 55-60 days for these seeds. So in 60 days we'll have a crop, and that, I think by 60 days we're looking into September or so, and so we should have a nice hearty crop of collard greens in 60 days. Thanks for joining me. This is Jesse in the Urban Monastery in the Urban Garden. Have a great day. So we've accomplished our task today of tilling the ground and sowing seeds into it. The seeds are now comfortably resting in the ground, and it's sure to germinate. Things have germinated here in my garden in the Urban Monastery, so it should be fine, even though the crops are a bit behind, maybe a couple of weeks because of the weather. The weather has improved and it's going to be warmer, so the germination process should not be a problem. Now, rather than exposing the theological principles behind this experience, I'm just going to leave it alone. The reason why? Parables are straightforward. They're pretty obvious. And in this particular parable from the Gospel, the parable of the seed, it's actually even more evident because it's explained to us what the parable is all about. So there's no need for me to say anything about it, except this, that our experiences should really connect very intimately with the principles, with the ideas that we find in the Gospel. It really makes everything kind of meatier. That is the incarnation, The incarnation is all about putting meat into an idea. And so today's exercise is about putting meat into an idea. And I love gardening because not only does it produce literal fruit, it produces spiritual fruit as well. I'm more attentive to my prayer life, more attentive to the Word of God, and by extension more attentive to my relationships because of those experiences. It's one thing to study, and I love studying. I'm Dominican by nature. But it's another thing too to put that study into action. Because you know what? If you have your face in a book, but you don't even realize that there's someone around you who needs help, what's the point of living? There's no salvation in a book. Salvation comes from God, indeed, with our participation. But if we are so self-centered to think that our salvation comes from study, then we're lost. And no Dominican that I know, and certainly no Dominican history, says that study is the end. Rather, it's a means toward our closer union with God. And so study for me then takes on the form of experience. Gardening is a great form of study, studying the earth and looking at what bears fruit. And so today we hope, and I hope, that your lives may bear fruit through your prayer life, through your activities, and all of it may be for the greater glory of God. Have a great day, and I'll see you again. Bye-bye.